Hello everyone, very good morning. So welcome to Engineering Chemistry course, new session. So in our last session we discussed about what is metal complex and what are the important character features of the coordination compounds and all those things, and we have also seen the important engineering applications of some of the coordination compounds. So like this we have many engineering applications with respect to coordination compound. That is the reason we want to study this course as a first unit. So today in this session I am going to explain you the different bonding theories available for the explaining structure and bonding involved in various coordination compounds or metal complexes. So let us see that one. So chemical bonding theories for metal complexes. There are several theories were proposed. Among those theories, the important theories are actually first one actually Werner's theory is one of the important theory, trying to explain the structure and stability of some of the metal complexes, and later even valency bond theory also trying to explain the formation of metal complex and stability of metal complexes of various octahedral and tetrahedral metal complexes. And then later we have a crystal field theory for various octahedral and tetrahedral and other metal complexes, and most advanced one actually molecular orbital theory. So like this we have four different theories in order to explain the structure and bonding involved in various metal complexes. So we will see one by one quickly, and mostly we are going to focus on this crystal field theory, after that molecular orbital theory. Okay, so let us start with the Werner's theory. So this Werner's theory was actually proposed by Albert Werner in 1893. So according to Werner, the formation of metal complex can be explained by using two different valencies like this. One is actually primary valency and second actually called secondary valency. So in this case it is actually formation of hexaamino cobalt 3 trichloride complex. So cobalt trichloride reacts with ammonia molecules and there is the formation of corresponding hexaamino cobalt 3 chloride like this. So Werner proposed actually there are, in the case of metal complex there are two valencies are there. One is actually primary valency and second one actually secondary valency. So primary valency basically provides information about the oxidation state of the central metal atom, and secondary valency actually provides the information about the coordination number of the corresponding carbon. So we can represent both primary valency and secondary valency in this manner like this. Here the dotted lines actually indicates the primary valency and the solid lines actually indicates the secondary valency. So like this Werner proposed structure of some of the metal complexes like this, and in the case of octahedral and the case of 6 ligands are there in a given complex, Werner proposed actually 3 possible structures like this, either planar hexagon, a trigonal prism or octahedral geometry like this for a complex which is actually having 6 coordination number. But this theory actually not applicable to all other type of complexes. It is actually having a lot of drawbacks, a lot of limitations, and this theory actually unable to explain the formation of tetrahedral and other metal complexes. So it can able to explain only certain 6 coordinate complexes in this manner only. So let us see what are the main major drawbacks and limitations of the Werner's theory. So these are some of the limitations of the Werner's theory. Werner's theory does not explain why only certain metals can able to form coordination complexes. What is the reason only D block elements or F block elements are able to form only metal complexes like this? What about the other metals? So there is no clarity for that particular point. And it does not explain why bonds in coordination compounds have directional properties. So that we will discuss in the case of crystal field theory. We will get the answer for this question during the crystal field theory. So basically in the case of metal complexes, the approach of ligand actually directional. So ligands can approach either in X direction or Y direction or Z direction like that. So always the bond formation between the metal ligand actually having directional properties. So that one actually not properly explained by the Werner's theory, and it does not explain why some of the complexes are actually having color, or some of the metal complexes are actually having magnetic nature, and some of the metal complexes are actually having different optical properties. So all these important properties like color, magnetic property or optical properties were not properly explained by Werner's theory. And another thing actually, Werner's theory does not distinguish between weak field ligands and strong field ligands. So what are the weak field ligands, what are the strong field ligands, how to classify the ligands into weak field and strong field kind of thing. So these point also not properly addressed by the Werner's theory. So these are some of the important limitations of the Werner's theory. In order to address all these limitations, So valency bond theory was also trying to explain the formation of the metal complexes. So valency bond theory actually proposed by Linus Pauling in 1931, and this theory actually one of the successful theory in the case of covalent compounds, covalent molecules. So by using hybridization concept. So basically valency bond theory utilizes hybridization concept. So, and we have some idea about the valency bond theory during our bridge course. We discuss something about the valency bond theory also. So this theory mainly utilizes the hybridization concept. So what is the meaning of hybridization concept? So whenever there is a molecule formation, so in that molecule formation, the central atom actually undergoes particular hybridization process depending upon the type of molecule. Even in the case of octahedral complexes or tetrahedral complexes, this theory utilizes hybridization of various metal orbitals available in the metal center. For example, in the case of octahedral metal complex formation, for example, there is a formation of octahedral metal complex. So octahedral metal complex means there is a formation of 6 new metal ligand bonds. That means in the metal center we have some s orbitals, we have some p orbitals like this, and we have some d orbitals like this. All these atomic orbitals undergoes hybridization like d2sp3 or sp3d2 hybridization and forms the corresponding octahedral metal complex. So that is the explanation given by the valency bond theory. For example, in the case of tetrahedral metal complexes, what is the possible hybridization? So in the case of tetrahedral metal complexes, the metal atomic orbitals undergoes sp3 hybridization process in this manner. There is a formation of corresponding sp3 hybridized metal orbitals, and these orbitals now interacts with ligand orbitals, and there is a formation of tetrahedral metal complex in this manner. But even this theory also unable to explain some of the important properties of the various metal complexes. So let us see what are the drawbacks of the valency bond theory. So like Werner's theory, even valency bond theory also does not explain color exhibited by the various metal complexes. So valency bond theory explains stability of the metal complexes, but it was unable to explain the why some of the metal complexes are exhibiting color property. So that point not properly explained by the valency bond theory. And it does not give quantitative interpretation of magnetic data. So as we said in the earlier classes, coordination compounds or transition metal complexes are actually having variable magnetic moment values. So this theory unable to predict the quantitative magnetic data. It is unable to predict the magnetic data in a proper manner. And valency bond theory does not make exact prediction regarding some of the metal complexes are actually having square planar geometry, why some of the metal complexes are actually having tetrahedral geometry. So it was unable to explain the formation of tetrahedral and square planar structures whenever there is a 4 coordinated metal complexes. That is another drawback. And even valency bond theory also unable to distinguish between the weak field ligands and strong field ligands. And last one actually, it does not give quantitative interpretation between the thermodynamic stability and kinetic stability. So always metal complexes actually have 2 different stabilities with respect to their stability and reactivity. One is actually thermodynamic stability, other actually called kinetic stability. So it is unable to give quantitative interpretation between the thermodynamic stability of the metal complexes or kinetic stability of the various metal complexes. So like this, even valency bond theory also having a lot of limitations. In order to address all these issues, we have to go to the other theories. So the important theory actually, the next theory actually, crystal field theory. So crystal field theory trying to answer all these questions, all these limitations, and trying to give new kind of explanation, and then it is actually probably new type of metal complex formation concept. So let us see what is crystal field theory, how it is trying to explain the formation of metal complexes, and how it is able to explain all these color, magnetic and optical properties exhibited by various metal complexes. So let us start crystal field theory of various metal complexes. So the crystal field theory is actually one of the bonding theory. Basically it is useful to explain the structure and bonding involved in various metal complexes. And this theory also useful to predict the stability of the metal complexes in terms of by calculating CFSE values. CFSE values of various metal complexes. So we will see all the details in this case. So first let me introduce what are the main processes of the crystal field theory, how it is useful to explain the formation of some of the metal complexes. And this crystal field theory was actually proposed by two different scientists, Hans Albert Bethe or John Hausberg van Valken in 1930. And both are actually developed this theory in order to explain the structure bonding to various metal complexes. According to crystal field theory, the main assumption actually, metals are treated as a positive charge species and ligands are treated as a negative charges or point dipoles like this. And whenever there is a metal ligand bond formation is there, so that bond actually having ionic in nature. So always the metal ligand bond actually ionic in nature according to crystal field theory. So that means basically there is a kind of electrostatic interactions exist between the metal orbitals and ligand orbitals. Okay, so we will see what are the important postulates of crystal field theory, then we can able to understand how the metal complex formation is there, all those things. So these are some of the important postulates of the crystal field theory. The first one actually, according to crystal field theory, the central metal atom or ion, the central metal ion treated as positively charged species. For example, in this case, this is one of the octahedral metal complex and this is our central metal ion. So this is actually treated as positively charged species. Always that is actually considered positive charged species, even though that is a only metal cation like this. And the surrounding ligands, what are the surrounding ligands are there? So the surrounding ligands are actually treated as negatively charged species in the case of negatively charged anionic ligands, or point dipoles or negative dipoles or point dipoles in the case once if the ligands are actually neutral molecules. The surrounding ligands actually we have two different types of ligands, either neutral molecules or anionic ligands. So according to crystal field theory, the surrounding ligands are actually treated as a negatively charged species if ligands belongs to negative charged species, or if the ligands are neutral molecules like ammonia, those are actually treated as a negative dipoles like this. So like this, the bond between the metal and ligand actually purely ionic in nature according to crystal field theory. The bond between the metal and ligand actually purely ionic in nature. So that means that is mainly because of the electrostatic interactions exist between the metal d orbitals and ligand orbitals. So like this, there is a formation of metal ligand bond. It is purely ionic in nature according to crystal field theory. And another important point actually, crystal field theory introduces splitting of d orbitals during the metal ligand bond formation like this. Whenever there is a metal ligand bond formation is there, so there is a splitting of d orbitals in the case of central metal ion. So these are the four important assumptions of the crystal field theory. By using all these things, crystal field theory trying to explain the formation of octahedral complexes or tetrahedral complexes. So let us see how the splitting of d orbitals is actually happening in the case of octahedral cases or tetrahedral molecules by taking different examples. So first we will see splitting of d orbitals or formation of octahedral metal complex in the case of octahedral metal complexes. Okay. So in order to understand splitting of d orbitals in the case of octahedral metal complexes, splitting of d orbitals in the case of octahedral metal complexes. So let us consider this example, hexaamine cobalt 3 chloride. So this is the example frequently we are using in all the cases. So if you see this complex, so it can ionize into the corresponding ions like this. There is a formation of hexaamino cobalt 3 cation like this, and these are the corresponding anionic ligands like this. So this complex cation, hexaamino cobalt 3 cation, actually having octahedral geometry like this. This is the octahedral geometry of the corresponding cation like this. So now we have to explain how this complex actually forming by using crystal field theory assumption called splitting of d orbitals. Okay. So if you see in this example, what is the central metal atom we have? The central metal atom actually cobalt. Yes or not? In this example, the central metal atom actually cobalt. If you see the electronic configuration of cobalt, it is something like this: 3d7, 4s2, outermost configuration something like this, 3d7, 4s2. You can also here represent like this also. So, but in this example, what is the charge of the cobalt? That means cobalt actually available in this case in the form of cobalt 3 plus. Yes or not? Because this coordination pair contains neutral ligands. Ammonium molecule acting as a neutral ligand. That means whatever the charge available here, that is mainly because of the central metal cation only. So that means in this case cobalt actually available in plus 3 state. So what is the meaning of plus 3 state? So in order to form cobalt to cobalt 3 plus, what we have to do? We have to remove 3 electrons from the cobalt. So like this. If we remove 3 electrons from the cobalt metal center, there is a formation of corresponding cobalt 3 plus cation like this. So this is the cobalt 3 plus electron configuration after removing 3 electrons from the 4s and 3d orbitals. So now this cobalt 3 plus cation actually having a d6 configuration like this, 3d6 configuration like this. So we know that how many d orbitals we have? We have a 5 degenerated d orbitals. Now all these 6 electrons actually present in the degenerated 5 d orbitals in this manner. So these are the degenerated d orbitals available in the cobalt 3 plus cation. So what is the meaning of degenerated d orbitals? So degenerated d orbitals means all the d orbitals actually having same amount of energy only. All the d orbitals actually having same amount of energy, and those are actually called degenerated d orbitals. And the 6 electrons actually available in those 5 d orbitals in this manner. So now we have to understand how this splitting actually happening in the case of octahedral metal complexes. So in order to understand the splitting of d orbitals in the case of octahedral metal complexes, first of all we have to understand what are the shapes of the all these 5 d orbitals. So let us see the shapes of the 5 d orbitals, and then we can able to understand how this splitting pattern happening in the case of metal complex like this. So let us see the shape of the metal d orbitals. So we know that we have 5 different d orbitals called actually dxy, dxz and dyz, and we have also dx square minus y square and dz square orbitals. Like this we have 5 different d orbitals, but all these 5 d orbitals actually having same amount of energy once we have a free metal ion. So what is the shape of the dxy orbital? It is actually double dumbbell shape like this, x axis, y axis, like this. So one is actually representing negative lobe, other one actually representing positive lobe like this. So this is the shape of the dxy orbital, and these are actually electron density lobes, electron moving. That means we can able to find the electron density either in this case or in this case. So all these lobes are actually present in between the x and y axis, yes or not? So lobes are actually available in between the x and y axis in this manner. So similarly we have a dxz orbital like this. This is x axis and this is actually z axis. So it is also something like this. So negative and positive like this. So similarly we have a dyz also. So this is y axis, now this is actually z axis. Negative, negative and positive like this. So like this we have 3 different d orbitals in this manner. In all those cases the electron density lobes are actually available in between the axis only, either xy or xz or yz in this manner. Now coming to the other one. So we have two more d orbitals like this. One is actually dx square minus y square. It is something like this. This is x axis, y axis. Like this. So this is actually dx square minus y square orbital like this. But here you can see the electron density lobes are actually available along the x-axis and along the y-axis only. Similarly, we have a d z square orbital also. So this is z-axis, this is x-axis x, and this is z. So like this. So this is actually positive, and this is negative like that. So like this, we have actually 5 different d orbitals. Among these 5 different d orbitals, 3 d orbitals lobes are actually available in between the axis, and 2 d orbitals lobes like dx square minus y square and dz square orbital case, the lobes are actually available along the axis only, either along the x-axis, y-axis, or along the z-axis in this manner. So, and all these 5 d orbitals now interacts with ligand orbitals, and due to the repulsions between them, there is a splitting of d orbitals in the case of octahedral or in the case of tetrahedral metal complexes. So that is what actually proposed by the crystal field theory. Whenever all these 5 d orbitals, because these d orbitals actually having some partially filled electronic configuration, like in this case d6 configuration, all these d orbitals actually having some number of electrons, either 6 electrons, 1 electron, or 10 electron, like that. So whenever these d orbitals interacts with ligand orbitals, what is the ligand? Ligand is also one of the electron pair donor atom. Yes or no? Donor atom or donor molecule. So that means ligands also having some number of lone pair of electrons, and corresponding metal center also having some number of d electrons. Whenever these two coming together, there is a kind of repulsions between them. So that repulsions actually depends on the shape of the d orbitals only. And the way approach of ligands also important, and the shapes of the d orbitals also important in order to understand the splitting of d orbitals in the case of various metal complexes. So these are the 5 shapes of the 5 different orbitals, and we can also represent in this manner like this also, but for better understanding. So what is the first one? First one actually dxy orbital, and second one actually dxz orbital, and third one actually dyz orbital. And in all the cases, the lobes are available between the axis only. And this is actually dx square y square orbital because it is x axis, and this is y axis, and lobes are available only on the x and y axis only. And this is actually dz square orbital like this. And in this case, lobes are actually available along the axis only. So in these 2 cases, lobes are available along the coordinating axis. In these 3 cases, lobes are available in between the axis. So whenever there is a metal complex is forming, whenever these orbitals interacts with ligand orbitals, always there is some kind of repulsion force between them. Due to the repulsions, there is splitting of d orbitals, and all those details we will discuss in the next session. So today I am going to stop at this point, and if you have any queries or if you have any doubts, please contact through my email ID, or you can also contact to my mobile number here. So thank you one and all for watching this session.